Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's second video, it'll take us to around the 27th of October. We'll also have a look at Beijing Climate Center for the next 40 days, and that takes us into the second half of November. We will begin, though, by having a look at the Arctic and the North Atlantic oscillation. Signs of a change still for this last week of October, but quite a bit of uncertainty about exactly what's going on. And I'll bring you up to date with all of the latest developments very shortly. It's a very confused picture for the final week of October, I must say. Before I go on with that, though, just say that 5-day forecast was released earlier on today at Gazovitz. So coming 5 days, going to have a lot of high pressure influences, lots of dry weather, and not a huge amount going on really. But have a look at the next 5 days weather in the 5-day forecast if you would like to do that. Big thank you to all of you for your birthday wishes. I'm always amazed that you remember that today is my birthday, so big thank you to everybody who's wishing happy birthday at Gazovitz and on Twitter and various other places too. Big thank you to all of you for doing that. Right, so we're going to start off by having a look at the Arctic and North Atlantic oscillations. The black line here tells us where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. The red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere in the North Pole. It's not driving anything, just tells you what the atmosphere has been doing and what the GFS ensembles are forecasting it to do. So you go right way back into summer, we can see that the Arctic oscillation has been in a very prolonged positive phase. We have had a few dips in the AO, we've gone a little bit negative, but essentially right way back into June, the Arctic oscillation has been in a prolonged positive phase, and it's still in we're still in the positive phase of the Arctic oscillation right now. However, you'll notice the GFS ensembles are dipping down as we go through this last week of October. They're very much seeing a drop in the Arctic oscillation. When the Arctic oscillation goes negative, it tells you that you've got high pressure appearing over the pole. You've got blocking. So blocking is the route pushing cold air out of the pole and down into the mid-latitudes. So one of the things we look for, particularly in winter, but from any time now onwards, really, through the winter into the early spring, one of the things we look at to determine whether we might get cold weather is whether the Arctic oscillation is in its positive or negative phase. When it's positive, you have low pressure over the pole and you'll keep the cold air bottled up generally in the pole. When the Arctic oscillation is negative, though, so you get a high pressure area, blocking area of high pressure over the pole, and that will push cold air out of the pole down into mid-latitudes. Not quite as straightforward as that, though, because it does depend where the high pressure, where the blocking is sitting. Might not necessarily be in a position to push cold air out to us in the west of Europe. It might push it out into some other parts of Europe. It might push it out into North America. It might push it out to Asia or Japan. So you can never totally guarantee when the Arctic oscillation goes negative that you're going to get cold air pushed out for us. But it is one of the things that we'd like to keep an eye on. And certainly the GFS ensembles are forecasting the AO to go into its negative phase, start going into its negative phase through the final week or so of October. The NAO is the same idea, so again the black line tells us where we've been with the NAO, the red line's at the end where GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. Again, we go right way back to the start of the summer. This will be the 1st of June just here. That's July, that's August, that's September, and we can see that we've been in a prolonged positive phase of the NAO. Occasionally we've seen the NAO going down into neutral territory. Never really gone negative at all at any point over the past few months, right way back to the 1st of June. So it has been an exceptionally positive phase of the NAO that we've been in, right way back into the start of the summer. And we are still very positive with the NAO as well, but the North Atlantic oscillation is being forecast to go negative by the GFS ensembles, and quite substantially so actually through that last week of October. So signs of a real pattern change here, I have to say, compared to what we've seen through the summer and also much of the autumn. Both the indexes are going into proper negative territory there, and that is signs that the pattern is changing. All I'd say is that so this part of the chart would be like the reliable time frame of the GFS ensembles, and this part would be the unreliable time frame, kind of like 240 to 384 hours, so like over 10 days to 2 weeks away. And of course, although we've seemingly got reasonably good agreement on this change taking place through the last week of October, I think we do have to stay cautious about it, just because it's such a pronounced change on what's gone on before, right way back to the start of June. This is a very dramatic change that the GFS ensembles are forecasting here, so have to be cautious about that. And also, it's such a long way out that just as any other charts are prone to chopping and changing in the unreliable time frame, well, so too are the AO and the NEO forecast charts. So yes, it does look like there's good agreement for a pattern change to something potentially a lot more blocked in the northern latitudes and potentially colder through the last week of October, but we do need to stay cautious about it at this stage until it gets into a more reliable time frame. And you'll see the reason why when I get to the generic charts in a moment. Centering the temperature is looking like this. Well, I just throw this up. So over the halfway point for the month now. Provisional up to yesterday, 16th of October. We're standing at 13.0, an anomaly of 1.5 degrees above average. So this isn't rising anymore, and I think the general trend through the second half of October will be to tick this down, but it's certainly not going to be overly dramatic. It's not going to be colder than average month. I think we'll end up on the milder than average side, probably not by all that much. I suspect we'll come out very similar, with a very similar anomaly to August and September, which will be somewhere between sort of average and a degree above average. So I don't think it'll be a big deviation, but I suspect we will be a little bit on the milder than average side at the end of the month. Unless we get a really big plunge in the temperature during the last week of October, there's not really a huge amount of evidence that we will do. If we was to do that, then maybe we could still scrape a cold and average month. But I think it's going to be a bit above average, but not much of a deviation. Right, these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. Looking at Luton today, so let's obviously have a look at Luton. So we start off close to average. It's actually going to warm up a bit over the weekend, going to get quite mild. And then early next week, we're going to see a drop in the temperature. Tuesday, Wednesday could be quite chilly. Temperatures try to recover a bit again through the middle part of next week, and then we're into this last week of October, this period just here, into the opening day or so of November, and still the GFS ensembles are trending colder. And they are actually, some of these ensemble levels are actually going really quite cold indeed, going down to -5 at 850 HPA, which would certainly be low enough to be producing frost. And for the north, anyway, maybe some wintry showers. Now, you'll notice this green line up here, one of the just about the warmest ensemble member going. That is the latest operational run of the GFS. So when I show you the 6 o'clock run of the GFS, the operational run, it's not going to show anything particularly cold, and you can see why, because of those, it's one of the warmest ensemble members. But the mean thrust of the ensemble, indicated by the white line here, which is the ensemble mean, that is going underneath the red line. So clearly there is good agreement. We're going to turn things quite a bit colder through the last week of October. There is some uncertainty about that. As far as precipitation is concerned, so the dry spell goes on. Lots of dry weather coming up over the next week to 10 days. Some precipitation spikes towards the end of the ensemble, but that's unreliable time frame stuff. It's a long way out. And for an ensemble, I keep explaining this, an ensemble in the middle of autumn, that is very, very dry indeed. So the prolonged dry spell continues. Temperature anomalies from the 17th, 25th of October are coming out ever so slightly above average. Not a big deviation, but just a little bit above average for the UK and Ireland. Still quite a warm sea, though, across most parts of Europe. Precipitation anomalies from the 17th, 25th of October, much drier than average for the UK, for Ireland, for France, all of those areas where it has been so very, very dry since the start of the summer. The dry spell goes on, and yet another really dry week coming up. Right, so this is the midnight run of the GFS, and it has high pressure extending through the UK into central parts of Europe on Saturday. There'll be a lot of dry weather around over the weekend, and relatively warm air being brought up from the middle of the Atlantic as well. That high pressure repositions out to west of Ireland by Monday, pulling down this cooler northwesterly wind. Lots of dry weather though. And then through the course of next week, we just keep that high pressure sitting just to the west of the UK. So again, lots of dry weather. The Atlantic is blocked off. The rain-bearing systems are all going through up here, well away from us. And that's where a jet stream is as well, of course. We're under this large ridge of high pressure. Now in summer, that would be a very warm chart in late October. That is potentially going to be producing dense fog by night. And with wind just coming around the top of that high pressure from the North Atlantic, it's not going to be particularly warm either by day. And then we go through into Thursday and into Friday as well, and high pressure continues to bring in lots of dry weather. Low pressure will always have a bit of an influence for northern Scotland, bringing some showers there, but basically next week looks pretty much dry from start to finish. We're up to day 10 now, which is Saturday the 27th of October. Still the high pressure is sitting there over the UK. Cold air is plunging down into Scandinavia with these areas of low pressure. We're just on the periphery of that, maybe bringing in some quite cold air to northeastern parts of the country. In the more extended range of the midnight run of the GFS, the high pressure starts to move up towards Scandinavia. So that would start to force the AO into genuinely negative territory to start getting high pressure forming across northern parts of Norway and Sweden up towards Svalbard. Get high pressure up there, you will start to force the AO into very negative territory. So high pressure begins to shift up towards Scandinavia. We start to have a go at turning winds into the east. And that's how we finish up with this particular GFS run, which is Friday, 2nd of November. Real Scandinavian high. Low pressure's out to west. We're bringing in kind of like a southeasterly, southerly to southeasterly wind. Wouldn't take all that much of an adjustment, though, to back the winds into the east. As the upper air temperatures, they still look reasonably mild for the UK. It wouldn't be that mild on the surface, I wouldn't have thought. This time of year, that kind of situation will produce a lot of cloud, and the wind will be quite chilly, generally a bit of an easterly tilt to that wind. But the coldest air is actually over Scandinavia on the midnight run of the GFS. Let's have a look at the 6 o'clock run then. This is the very latest. We have again the high pressure building through the UK, going into central parts of Europe on Saturday. Going to be a dry weekend for most of us and quite warm as well. Early next week, the high pressure repositions out to west of Ireland, pulls down those cold winds or cooler winds from the northwest, and then through the course next week, that high pressure is dominating the weather. We go up to the end of next week now, which is Friday, 26th of October. Again, just nudging that high pressure out to west of us, trying to pull down this Arctic northerly wind, but that just misses us really and goes down into Scandinavia. Instead, we remain under this high pressure. Now, this high pressure by day is going to be producing probably a reasonable amount of fine weather with sunny spells. By night, though, I would think increasing risk of fog through the course of next week, and probably quite cold nights too, especially late on next week. Although we're on the periphery of that northerly wind, we probably do get another bit to start producing genuine night frost around, not just ground frost, but probably air frost by the end of next week. We're up to day 10, which is Saturday, 27th of October, and the high is still rooted over the top of the UK. In the extended range, very similar to the midnight run, in that high pressure inches its way up towards Scandinavia. So we finish up on Friday, the 2nd of November, 384 hours away, very long way out, with high pressure probably in over Scandinavia. These low pressures are out in the west of Europe, so we're under low pressure actually by this point, but it looks like this low is starting to move southeastwards with the jet stream. If we could run another couple of days, I suspect we would see the wind turning round into the east via that area of high pressure that's actually up there over Scandinavia and western Russia. So the GFS is trending towards Scandinavian high, getting going by the time we get through to the start of November. These charts are still very, very abnormal. We're having abnormal weather patterns. We have been having abnormal weather patterns for a very long time. It's really been going on since we had that sudden stratospheric warming in the middle of February. That produced the beast from the east, of course, initially, but then that eventually culminated in what was an incredibly hot and dry summer. And these abnormal weather patterns have been an on-off feature really since the start of the year. If the GFS is right, they're still going on with high pressure trying to get going over Scandinavia, so maybe we'll have to start thinking a bit about the beast from the east returning at some point in the final month or two of the year. There's no sign of a genuine resumption of zonality and wet and windy, stormy type weather patterns that we expect at this time of the year. The weather patterns remain very high pressure dominated, and whilst I know a lot of you are really fed up with this high pressure, would like to get rid of it, would like to go into a spell of stormy weather, if you also like cold weather patterns, then you want to keep this high pressure going. You want to get it to Scandinavia, as the GFS is trying to do in its extended range today, because that will always be the route to getting the coldest weather if high pressure over Scandinavia or over Greenland. So let's just wait and see. These abnormal weather patterns are certainly going on into start of November if the GFS is right. ECMWF looks like that weekend has high pressure dominating. Quite warm. The high pressure pulls out to west of Ireland at start of next week. We pull down this cooler northwesterly winds, so it will turn a bit cooler in the early part of next week. And then just keep that high pressure generally out to the west of us, really. Don't pull down any winds from the north. It looks like by the time we get through to day 10, which is Saturday 27th of October, starting to try and turn a little bit more unsettled. Not sure about that run at all. That's very different to what the GFS is showing. It might be right, but I suspect this idea of high pressure beginning to break and allow the Atlantic in probably is a little bit of a strange one. I would suspect if we was able to go through the ECMWF on some members, we will find that's relatively an outlier type pattern. Then the GM looking like that, high pressure again building through the country through the weekend, lots of dry weather, then it moves out to west early next week, brings down those cooler winds from the northwest. Let's get up to day 10, and that's how we look at day 10. So still the high pressure out to west of the UK. Looks like it's trying to reach northwards, but trough is in over Scandinavia. This trough is sinking down into Scandinavia, taking cold air through there. We're on the periphery of that. The cold air is kind of like there down the North Sea, but probably enough of it to be producing night frost by that final weekend of October. Where we will go after that remains to be seen. It does look as though the GM is trying to reach that high pressure northwards and probably set it up around there somewhere, but whether that would actually come off, of course, we can't say. High pressure is dominating though through to the end of October. That looks like it's a definite message from today's model outputs. It's just whether we get that high pressure Scandinavia or take it to our north and start to produce colder weather with it. Finally, just have a look at Beijing Climate Center. So these are the 500 millibar height anomalies for the next 40 days, broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 16th to 25th of October. We find that we have above average heights to our southwest in the coming 10 days, with below average heights up to the north. The jet stream is doing something like that. Most of the southern conditions will be in the north with that. The driest conditions will be in the south and the southwest. No problems with temperatures. The next 10 days looks very different. This is the 26th of October to the 4th of November, with a trough of low pressure centred over top of the UK. There's not a great deal of evidence for this within the GFS anyway, but this is what the Beijing Climate Center is suggesting, that we set up a trough of low pressure over top of the UK. That would be very unsettled. There'd be quite a lot of wet weather coming in with that. Probably quite cool as well, because I think we're on the cool side of the jet stream there, just about. So, cool and unsettled there for the end of October into start of November. Then the next 10-day period looks different again. This is the 5th to the 14th of November, with above average heights building over and to the east of the UK, not northeast, but over to the east of the UK, which would just bring about a lot of dry and settled weather. Not particularly cold. It's not an Arctic source air mass, but of course high pressure in November is going to be quite chilly. You're likely to get night frost. You're likely also to get mist and fog, which may become quite dense and linger all day in places by November, as the sun hasn't got the energy to burn it off. So if we just look at the temperature anomaly there, which we won't, but if we was, I suspect it would be showing warmer than average because the model looks at the high pressure and the upper air temperature soundings, and it thinks that it's going to be warm down on the surface. But of course, it's not that simple, it's not that straightforward in November. So probably that will be quite cold, actually, but not Arctic cold, just sort of damp, foggy, frosty conditions if the skies are clear, that type of weather pattern. And then finally, we go into the final 10-day period, which takes us from the 15th to the 24th of November. Still a lot of anticyclonic influences. Now the high pressure looks like it's in the middle of the Atlantic and to the south of Greenland and around Newfoundland, quite an odd place to get high pressure in the second half of November. It's also extending a ridge in towards the UK as well. A little bit of low pressure developing up to the north, not as much as you would expect at this time of the year. So still quite dry, I would have thought there, going into the second half of November. Probably a bit milder because the air is coming in from off the Atlantic. But overall, the main signal from Beijing Climate Center for November is very, very dry, and the high pressure dominated weather goes on. That's all really speculative, and as we've seen from the shorter range model output, even within the next 10 days there is a lot of uncertainty. So it looks like we've got reasonable agreement within the GFS ensembles to turn the AO and the NAO negative through the last week of October. If we do, we'll start to set up high pressure, maybe Scandinavia, maybe somewhere like the Arctic, and there is a chance we might get some colder conditions, although actually the short range models look like they're backed away from those northerly winds for this last week of October. But now it looks like the possibility, anyway, of getting the high pressure to Scandinavia for the early part of November is beginning to come into play. Easterly winds, if we do get high pressure into Scandinavia early November, easterly winds will not be overly cold generally, but they might produce really damp conditions, a lot of grey weather, and of course, if the easterly was to go on long enough, then eventually you would start to pull down proper cold air from the back of the high. It takes a little while, but eventually we might go in that direction if those easterly winds were to last long enough. But it does look very, very uncertain, this, for the end of November and into inside of November. And the main point is that the weather patterns continue to be abnormal, as they have been since we had the sudden stratospheric warming back in February. We've had very abnormal weather patterns, and it appears that this is continuing for the time being anyway. So we'll just wait and see where this is going, and we'll keep you updated over the next few days. Right, after enjoy the rest of your birthday. We'll be back tomorrow with your week to 10 day look ahead video, but that's all for now, and thanks for watching.